Hello there. Welcome to the Immigrant Perspective, where we look at the many aspects of the fall of the American Empire through the eyes of an immigrant. Today's topic is who is America's greatest enemy? Um, I think it is best to start this podcast with this topic because usually we think of the fall of an empire as coming from, you know, enemies, external powers, probably an attack or something along those lines. And so, if I claim that the American empire has fallen, I should be able to identify who has launched this attack and who has led to the fall of the American empire. If you're watching this, I'm sure, or listening to it on podcast, I, I believe you must have heard other people talk about it. But I dare say most other people talk about the possibility of an American fall. You know, along the lines of things are going bad, America is on the wrong path, or anything along those lines. However, as an immigrant who has seen this happen before somewhere else, I am not coming with, the wisdom of this great commentators to explain how I think America could be on a bad path. I'm coming with another perspective. I've seen it happen before, and I do not think America, in doing this, can get out of it. So who is America's greatest enemy? I mean, the first contenders would be China, Russia, and names like that. So let's go see, who do you really think can do this to us? So in China, when you look at the charts, you see how the Chinese economy has blown out of proportion. Like, it's literally an economic miracle. China's economic growth has outdone the US, has outdone Western Europe, has outdone the world, has outdone the S&P 500. It's literally in a class of its own. I mean, if a picture says more than 1,000 words, this certainly says more than 1 billion. You can just see it. And I understand how anyone looking at this can consider the reality that, China can knock off the US because China is, it's getting up there. I don't have the data right now, but I think the GDP of China is around the $18 trillion range, while the US is around $23 trillion. And sadly, because we throw out these numbers so much, it looks like, you don't have such a big difference between 23 and like 18, but we're talking about trillion, guys. So yeah, I get it. But I disagree. I do not think that the fall of the US empire is basically because of the Chinese growing at such a great pace. That's not what I think. It brings us to the next assumption. It has to be military might, right? And who else do you want to compare US military might to? That would be the Russian military. Even if it's just because of the nuclear warheads, like the chart on the screen. And you see how it looks like these two nations literally have been competing for who can kill the other person the quickest and the soonest. Nuclear warheads out of this world when you compare it to other nations. And even at that, I still do not think that Russia is a worthy is in a worthy place to take the title of the nation responsible for the fall of the American empire. And then that would leave us with the next question. Around the world, who do you think has the capacity to bring down the US? And there's only one answer. You see, when you think about concepts like I let the cat out of the bag. When you think about concepts like taking someone's life or death, there are many ways it could occur. It could occur like, through murder, which is someone intentionally taking another person's life, or it could occur through, some charges are classified as manslaughter, which would be someone unintentionally taking someone's life, like maybe a car crash, reckless driving. That's manslaughter because whoever did it did not wake up planning to go kill that person, but due to circumstances which were supposedly within his control, recklessness, whatever, and he let go, it cost someone's life. So manslaughter. But there's another form of death to the human life, and that's not well thought about when we think about the concept of death in terms of a crime, because I don't think you can charge this. But what I'm referring to is the concept of a suicide. And in my opinion, when looking at it in terms of a nation, I think that the American state is responsible for her fall. America is doing so much more to destroy herself than her enemies are trying to, even if you combine it. And we can look at all the data. So gone are the days when the American experiment was that of freedom, was that of those ideals stated in her Constitution, the whole idea of the rights to life, to liberty, and to the pursuit of happiness. That does not exist anymore. I mean, we continue to fall in love with those concepts. It's more like nostalgic. You can look at every aspect of the American experience and you would realize that these fundamental principles that brought this country out of nothing into the greatest nation in the world have all been cast away. Is it rights to life? America's trying to argue that, hey, not giving people rights to pull out the life of a child from a womb is somewhat oppressive. Is it your right to liberty? Well, you tell me about the arguments that have to do with, if you want to own your arms or you don't want to own them, or even the concepts of, I mean, it's in everything. We can go on along that path. Or is it in the pursuit of happiness? When last did you hear America celebrate success? America does not celebrate success. The only kind of success America chooses to celebrate these days is what America calls you coming out and, how do they put it now? Telling us your truth. Every time America sees someone who has made it out of nothing, create his own business, America tries to blame the faults and the issues of America on that person. So in America right now, if you're a successful businessman, if you're successful at anything, you were supposed to be apologizing. We can go through every aspect of the American experience, and you would realize that even though you may argue that these things have almost always existed in the American consciousness, I cannot find a time in American history, in all that I have looked at, in all that I've tried to read up about this country, and in all that I have lived in, I cannot find a time in history when these things were celebrated. Right? Now, if you go back to, let me give an example. There is a time in American history that eugenics was a thing. But when you think about it, it was not part of law. If you go read about it, you will hear that the victims were most times kidnapped, drugged out, and these nefarious operations were conducted on them when they were unconscious, right? So you find that even though something as dark as that was going on, it was not backed by the law. There was a time when, American history, you will find a lot of mafia gangs and all that, like in New York, the families fighting, but these things were not backed by the law. These people had a way of paying off the law makers and paying off the police, but it was still illegal. Do you get where I'm coming from with that? But in today's America, different things that are supposed to be illegal are being put in as part of the law. So there is no other remedy to fight against these things. I'm not going to enumerate them on this first episode. But if we must talk about it, think about the fact that right now they are passing laws in some states of this country promoting the idea that if a child who is troubled mentally or who has been indoctrinated in a school suddenly says, hey, you know what, I feel like I was born in the wrong body, we are putting in laws, passing laws in certain states now, whereby it would be legal for the state to come take that child from the family if the family doesn't support it and go mutilate that child. So that's what I'm saying, that you as a country, we as a people have come to the point of no return. Because when these laws are passed, they begin to offer precedents whereby if you want to argue it, it's like, oh, it's been on for such a long time. It's like when you look at, yeah, maybe you can always repeal the law, true. But when you look at things like Roe v. Wade and you see how long it's been there for, and the fact that it has literally programmed a generation or more of people to really accept this thing as a right, the fact that you can get the Supreme Court to repeal the law does not necessarily mean that it has changed in the minds of people. The average person who already believes this to be a right is still looking for different ways to get along with it or to go along with it. And so that's the argument I am making. By the time states begin to pass laws in favor of child mutilation, you're creating something which would automatically mean that it becomes cultural. We can look at things like the breakdown of the family system in the United States. There are lots of economists and historians who would argue that it is mostly because of the welfare state. And these are things that were instituted about the 60s or the 70s. But what has happened is that it's come on to program a generation, or maybe more than a generation of people for the past 50, 60 years, that the effects are so rampant in society that even if you were suddenly going to, stop the welfare state right now, you would not be saving the families, because the social consciousness, the minds of the people have been tweaked to accept that that is a way of life. And when you look at the different aspects of the American experience, you begin to realize that you have several of these incidents, several of these patterns. And when you pause to think, what is the future of America if America continues on this path, you realize America does not even have that future. And I would explain if you let me. As at the time America became the number one nation in the world, if you read a book by Ray Dalio, Principles, you could check this online. Over 40% of the world's GDP was dependent on America, right? Go look at the world GDP right now. You will realize that America is only responsible for about less than 20% of world GDP right now. So, if America was then super wealthy, super creative, super productive, she could get away with some faults. But right now, with close competitors like the Chinese and all these other people, like the BRIC nations trying to come together, even when you think about the concept of the new currency, the fact that Saudi Arabia has suddenly said that they're okay with the idea of trading with other nations outside of the dollar. When you think of all those things, you realize it's coming together at a time when the United States cannot suddenly say, hey, we can get out of this and still be number one. And that is why, on that basis, when you see everything else happening and see the fact that even on the inside, America is continuously being stupid with the policies she accepts, with the culture she thinks are okay, with the decadence in the home, the lifestyle, with the fact that there is no more truth. Your doctors cannot tell you the truth. Your parents cannot tell you the truth. The teachers do not tell you the truth. The media certainly does not tell you the truth. In America, you cannot just wake up and find the truth. You have to actively look and search for it, like you are in some totalitarian state where you're trying to get truth from another source. When you combine all that's going on the inside and realize how the other nations who are competing for top position are acting, you find that America has no choice. And it's a matter of time before someone would literally stand up and say, hey, you guys are nothing. And that's it. And that's how it happens. Because America's enemies do not need to fire a shot. America is already doing that to herself. It's at this point, I think, there are many other things that can be said and should be said, but I appreciate you for coming to the very first episode of our podcast. We are going to do a lot more topics just to show you how the decay is going, because you will never get this from the media. And from the perspective of someone who was born somewhere else, who lives somewhere else, and who has seen this occur again and again, it will help you realize that this is the time to begin to seek a second plan, begin to change certain things, because some disaster is really coming. I hope you check out other episodes. I hope you like and subscribe. And until the next one, peace.